Ball in about 9 or 10 days, depending on how you do the math. I mean, where would you rather be? What part of the year would you rather be in? And I know that we're counting down till Saturdays in the fall are back, but I promise you, in the pantheon of this show, in the pantheon maybe even of your life, there are a few days you'll remember. We'll remember tonight. In the words of Vince McMahon, you want shocking tonight. You'll get shocking. Late Kick Live, high atop a sun and rain-soaked downtown Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We are down here because, frankly, the studio looks a lot better than what we have in Nashville right now. That's all that changes about the production of the show tonight. But boy, do we have a jam-packed show tonight. Many of you have waited on this night for a long time. Not because of playoff changes potentially already upon us, which we will lead the show with. Not just because we're predicting LSU and Michigan's total records tonight. Not just because I got a metric ton of fall camp intel, but friends, paper pop, paper pop, paper pop. The gas station recruiting war reaches its climax this evening. My promise to you, before this live broadcast is over, we will have a commitment on our hands. Yes, I'm as excited as you are. They're watching us in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Salem, Oregon, Hollywood, South Carolina. I've never been there before, but it sounds lovely. And Baymanette, Alabama. Thank you guys so much. All I can tell you is if you're not following on socials right now, at Late Kick Josh, you're missing a lot. You missed a lot this past week. You will miss more, I guarantee it, this coming week, because we've got a bunch of stuff that's been jammed into August that we're just rolling out. Like I'll have more on that before the show ends tonight. But here we go. Let's dive into the show. Appreciate you guys. If you tune in live, make sure you subscribe to the channel in the process. Are we about to have more college football playoff changes? Sometimes, as Meemaw used to say, the bad guys do the most important work. I'm not normally the bad guy. Sometimes I have to be the bad guy, though I have been painted as nothing less than the spawn of Satan in G5 circles lately. Why? If you're new to the show, why did they do that to you, Josh? Well, because I told the truth as I see it. Some of you might call that an opinion. I call it the truth. And I think the truth is that the G5 should have its own playoff for the betterment of the G5 and college football. Now, obviously, many G5 fans disagree with that because to them, that means you are blocking them out of inclusion from the main playoff, which is what I would be doing there. I just don't view it as blocking out. Well, anyway, the G5 developing their own playoff has not been a serious conversation as of late. We've talked about it on this show, but it hadn't been a serious conversation. My feeling on that, twofold. Number one, it makes sense because this level of football is not the same as the major Power 4 level of football, and not all of Power 4, because I'll grant you, some of the bottom of Power 4 is wet trash as well. But the big boys that go to the final dance in college football's highest level are playing a totally different sport, totally different rules in many cases, and certainly total different looking personnel, coaching staffs. We all know that. Everybody knows that. There is this faint but childlike obsession with getting included and having a chance at the playoff. Now we know, even the G5 folks, we'll never actually win that title, but we deserve a chance. And then I look at it and I say, that's stupid. That's ignorant. Because everybody, even the G5 apologists, are themselves admitting, well, no, we're not going to win it, but technically you never know. I promise you I know. I promise you I know. So I've always said, well, why not format a tournament for yourselves that you can actually win? But I digress. So that got us to today. Because that's all old news and old opinion. Today, friend of the program, Ross Dellinger over at Yahoo Sports, who has been leading the way on this stuff for, frankly, a long time. He put out a piece this morning. Loved the thumbnail. The art, whoever did the artwork on that Dellinger piece, by the way, plus 10 points for you. I really love that. But that's not what this is about. So, as you know, we are expanding to a 12-team playoff this year. And if you don't know that, welcome back. We're expanding to 12 this year. And you probably also know the G5 is guaranteed a spot in the college football playoff. But for how long? How long? Is this just etched in stone? Of course it's not. Of course it's not. So again, bad guy JP over here has been telling you, it is my opinion, you need to stop leaning on major college football. You need to stop leaning on this college football playoff to essentially be your lifeline and keep you alive because you don't know how much longer it's going to be there. No, Josh, it'll always be there. All righty. Well, let's arrive at this article that was released today, where Dellinger accurately and again pointed out we only have 2 years guaranteed on this format. It's like whispered, but it's right there in front of you in plain sight. You're only guaranteed this 12-team format for 2024 and 2025. Then there is, I think, what is called like a look-in provision, which just means we can blow it up if we don't like it, courtesy SEC and Big Ten. That's really what that says. If you want me to boil it down for you and get all the legal types out of the room, that's really what that boils down to. So Ross Dellinger, in this little piece he put out this morning, wasn't little, it was just a piece, he said, spoke to Mike Oresco. So Mike Oresco is the recently retired commissioner of the American Athletic Conference. And Mike Oresco admitted we've got some concerns that if we don't perform well in these first couple of years, boy, it may be lights out for us. Look at this quote. If you're listening on a podcast, down the road, I do think it might be a concern, especially if our G5 teams do not do well enough and aren't ranked high enough. This is not a plan. This right here is not a plan. This is wish casting. This is me growing up in rural Georgia and wishing for a white Christmas. No, if I've got the means, I hop on a plane and fly to Minneapolis. That's how I ensure myself a white Christmas. This is not a plan for the survival of the G5 as we know it in the future, just to hope that arbitrarily and totally randomly in 2024 and 25, whichever G5 team makes it, Memphis, Liberty, App State, whoever, they hang in there with the big boys. They put forth a good showing, and somehow, some way, that preserves the integrity and the authenticity of the 12-team playoff, including, baked in it, G5 inclusion. That's not a plan. I have said for a while, they don't really care about you, and truth be told, they don't really want you in this thing now. I would present as my supporting evidence this question: what change has been made at the behest of these people lately in this sport that has benefited you in any way? You keep getting knocked further and further down the ladder, but as long as there's a rung, as long as there's at least one rung beneath you, it's like, well, we're still on the ladder. Great survival strategy there. Now, there is good news. In this Ross Dellinger piece, there is good news. It seems they're kind of, sort of listening. I didn't pop the paper because I'm not totally satisfied with this, but there was this broad plan laid out right before they're going to meet next week, I think in Dallas at what constitutes a G5 summit of sorts. And it's just the G5 powers that be and the commissioners. They're going to gather and they're going to essentially talk about how they stay alive moving forward. Now, part of that is they are reportedly open to discussing a reshaped postseason incorporating bowls. And basically what this equates to is like a college football NIT tournament, which is not what I'm pushing for, but it's better than nothing. They essentially said it would be a secondary title that teams not in the playoff could play for. Now, they didn't boil it down to just G5 teams, so who knows? This is very broad strokes right now. My counter to that is, great, you're getting creative, you're thinking along the right lines, now speed up. You're trotting, you're crawling, speed up, build your own playoff. Find a way to build your own playoff while you've got time. You will never be closer to the Power Four than you are in perception right now. It will never be this close again. They said they're not going to touch the auto bid in this story. So they're still leaning on that auto bid. I know why they're leaning on it. It brings them a lot of money. It brings them more money than they otherwise could ever generate themselves, which in and of itself kind of makes my argument for me. But that's not the argument that I lean on, because then you could just come back at me with the have not thing, and I know where we'd go. We'd go nowhere on that. No, my point is this. Understand the climate right now. Understand these people don't care about you. Understand if you disappeared tomorrow, they would not view it as detrimental to the greater good of college athletics. They'll say they do not. G5 inclusion in the college football playoff will become laughable. As a concept, it will become laughable. And here's why. You're going to throw Boise at me, you're going to throw UCF at me, and I'm going to tell you that era is over. And it's over because of two things, only one of which is really being talked about. The transfer portal, rightly, is being cited as something that is going to gut the G5 and FCS. And you should be citing that. because it is already in the process of gutting the G5 and FCS. But here's something else that I pointed out a couple of weeks ago. You need to be paying attention to this. These new coaching rules are going to do as much to gut the G5 ranks as the portal is. The portal's taking the players. This new coaching rule, where you can have your army of off-field analysts, except they're not off-field anymore because they can be on-field and they can coach, that right there is the death blow. Part 2. So it's like a 2-part death blow to the G5. And my point there is, you'll not have another Boise as a program. You'll not have another UCF as a program. There's a reason those folks down in Orlando did everything they could and bear crawled over broken glass to get to the P4 ranks. Number one, because all of them wanted to be there the whole time. But number two, because they knew that was the last boat leaving. That was the last lifeboat, and they hopped in it. Moving forward, if any program, if any team even remotely starts to approach the level you'd have to play at to make any noise in the college football playoff, they will be gutted. The coaches will be gone. The players will be gone. It's not comfortable or fun to hear. I don't like it. I wish we could go back. I love those stories. I remember I was working in the fabric warehouse down in Columbus when Boise pulled the upset over Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, and the next day at work, it's all we talked about. We listened to the audio of the replay on ESPN radio all day. Awesome. That's over. Those days are not coming back. And more, it will be laughable that there is an auto bid for G5 baked into this thing. And understand what I mean when I say that, because you haven't seen this yet. You're thinking of this as the expanded playoff era. It's the auto bid expanded playoff era as it's currently constructed. And that means, yeah, if Liberty goes undefeated and they're ranked 10th, it would make sense to most people for them to be in the playoff. But understand, there was a year recently where the highest ranked G5 conference champ, or the highest ranked G5 team, was 23rd, I think. That team's automatically in the playoff. Do you understand that? Some of you don't have a problem with that. I do, and I think it makes no sense whatsoever. Now, I also didn't even want playoff expansion to begin with, so I'm not going to get all bent out of shape arguing over who did and didn't get screwed out of a 12 seed. That's not where I'm going with that. But in a general sense, I just think there is such a great product that is not being realized right now. Last year at LSU, for example, they had one of the best quarterbacks they've ever had. They sucked on defense. They wasted Jaden Daniels. They wasted a Heisman Trophy winner because they sucked on defense. I'm looking at the possibility of a G5 playoff and how entertaining that would be for those of us who love college football, and how you would have a legit shot of winning that thing as opposed to whatever this farcical auto bid structure is that you're currently longing for. And I think about how much I'd love that and how everyone would love that, and we're being denied because of essentially what amounts to a charade in my mind. So my hope is, over the coming weeks or months or years, Ross Dellinger breaking news, full G5 playoff model on the table. Not holding my breath, but I can hope for it. Welcome into the show. Happy to have you guys with us. If it looks a little different, it's because we're down in Fort Lauderdale at our CBS Sports HQ studios. Our friends here kind enough to just basically let us in here whenever we want to be in here. And let's also be real, it's after 8 o'clock Eastern, so no one's in the building right now except for us. So it does help. Okay, fall camp intel. We have got gas station recruiting wars commitment coming tonight at some point live on the show. Stay tuned. Fall camp going on all over the place. I was actually out of practice yesterday. I'll tell you about it in a second. But I was not at South Carolina, but I do want to talk to you about South Carolina for a second. You know, they had the 16th ranked portal class in the country. Did they hit on them? That's what everyone's wondering about their portal kids everywhere, South Carolina included. Did we hit on them? Because we kind of need to hit on them. The running back room looks a lot different, feels a lot different than it did last year. They went and got Rocket Sanders from Arkansas. And of course, if Rocket Sanders is healthy, Rocket Sanders is a game changer in any conference, SEC included. And they're going to lean on him. Okay, you want to talk about the importance of health of a player. He's got to be healthy for South Carolina. This is not the age of the feature back anymore in college football. This will be a season where South Carolina needs a feature back. So far, and I wouldn't think that they are workloading him particularly heavy up there right now in Columbia, but so far, they really love what they have there. They got to replace a lot at wide receiver. Jacobs, the FSU transfer, that's one to keep an eye on. We're hearing great things about him. And As for Lenora Sellers, the quarterback there, here's the thing about camp. Anyone who can watch fall practice, which is normally closed to media and fans, if you get to watch it, sometimes it's hard to know what you're looking at. And so if anyone does get access to it, sometimes their mind works in highlight mode. Like if you watch SportsCenter, you're not watching a game, you're watching highlights of a game, but you may tell your dad later, hey, I saw the Braves game. Boy, man, we lit LA up tonight. No, you scored 4 runs, and all 4 runs were batted in by 2 guys in your lineup, otherwise they were terrible. Well, that's not lighting LA up, but the highlight made it look like it. Well, in fall camp sometimes, guys make a few wow plays, and if you don't know any better and you're watching that, you'll dude, Lenora Sellers is killing it in fall camp. Well, what if he mishandled 3 snaps that day that also would have cost you a drive, which cost you a game? So my point there is generic, but then we zoom in on Lenora Sellers to say he is having the exact kind of camp that you would expect a guy who hasn't really started yet, but has a ton of potential to have. South Carolina is not a team that is flush with 5-star talent across the board. Okay, there are varying degrees of weaknesses on this team. If you've got a quarterback that can overcome some of those, that's wonderful. You do not blindly rely on a guy who has never started in this league to be that right out of the gate. But what you hope is his performance level scales over the course of a season. So you're going to see flashes in practice. You're going to see lowlights if you watch practice. You just hope the latter become fewer and the former become more. And that's Lenora Sellers in a nutshell right now in fall camp at South Carolina. Hale McGranahan, by the way, over at the Big Spur. Really appreciate him passing along a lot of information for us there. At Penn State, question's been wide receiver for a few years, frankly. Question's been wide receiver up there. I'll grant you that. Tight end room's a strength. Again, not the first time we've said that about Penn State, but Tyler Warren, we talked about him the other night. I saw Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl talking about him earlier today. Love him. Hey, Jesse, the other tight end, Andrew Rapplier. Hard name to pronounce, but you better learn it, especially if you're broadcasting a Penn State game, because they love the way he looks. But also Tyseer Denmark, he is a late arrival, which is just what we just call a summer arrival now. If you don't enroll early, you're a late arrival. 5'10", 177 pounds. He was a 3-star wide receiver, I believe, in this last class, but he's come in and been one of the surprises of their fall camp. So remember what we're talking about here. We're talking about a Penn State offense that was totally stagnant, explosive plays non-existent in big games last year. So we're overlapping some of this new talent with a new offensive coordinator. I've told you for a while, NFL people have not sold their Drew Aller stock at all. They think in the right system, that guy can still shine. I agree with them on that. And I think the NFL scouts out there breathe a great sigh of relief when they find out the guy in the white T-shirt who talks in a microphone for a living agrees with them. You know, but be that as it may, this offense could look radically different this year, could look slightly different this year. You got to have playmakers, though. Davian Collins also. Jesse, he was on campus last year, was he not? Collins was there last year at corner, and now they've got a couple of transfers in there because they lost a couple of big names. And strangely, Collins is the guy that we keep hearing the most about. And so A.J. Harris came in there, and Kimber, I believe, came in there, but it's Collins that's first out of the mouth of a lot of people who are close to the program. Tyler Donahue at Lions 24/7, kind of echoing that sentiment when we talk to him. So Penn State starts on the road at West Virginia. You're going to see them very, very early out of the gate. How different does that secondary look at corner? How different does that offense look? Miami, everybody's got an opinion. I was down here yesterday, had nothing better to do, so I went over, knocked on the door. They let me in. I watched practice yesterday over at Miami. I'm going to make a face that you can't see on podcast. You ever make this face before? It's the face where you just saw something either you weren't supposed to see, or you saw something that maybe is just a little bit more, a little bit better than what the public thinks exists behind the curtain. Well, that is Miami right now. Miami looks like an SEC team on the lines of scrimmage. What you do with that talent is up to you entirely. All I can tell you is what the old eyeballs saw. Now, I got to keep my mouth shut on a whole lot of things that you see, and that's the trade-off for being able to watch practice. But just in a generic sense, what I've wanted to know about Miami is all these transfer portal guys, are they legit? I don't think there's a team we talk about where I am more comfortable that they consensusly hit on their portal additions than Miami. And keep in mind, Miami really disproportionately went in the transfer portal. There are some guys that I don't care if you're standing on campus at Georgia, I don't care if you're standing on campus in Columbus, Ohio, or Tuscaloosa, those guys would fit right in. Having talent versus having a great football team, two totally different things. Now, I will tell you one thing, that Georgia Tech debacle last year was a disaster. I get a strange sort of sense that that will long-term serve that program well. Because, I mean, when you have those kinds of things happen, they can either bury you or you can be embarrassed and learn from them. And I think a lot of the latter has happened around Miami. I don't exactly know how to put that into words, but I'm just telling you, I'm around there a fair amount. And you can tell a lot of lessons have been learned there. A lot of lessons. Some of them you guys talk about publicly. Some of them are a lot more nuanced and intricate. But I'll tell you, the other thing is, as much as we talked about Damian Martinez, I think the running back depth at Miami may be a little bit better than folks give them credit for. I don't necessarily know that that's a position we've talked a ton about, but I think it bears close watching. That's a team that if they are what I think they are at running back, you know, I hadn't even mentioned Cam Ward. I hope you understand what I'm saying there. It's not a quarterback-centric team necessarily. That quarterback's really good. Cam Ward's really good, but this is a team that can beat you a number of different ways. Virginia Tech, defensive tackle did not have a ton of returning production. I think most people who follow the sport closely knew that, but we were up there in spring. We watched them practice in spring, actually, and they kept telling us, you know, this kid out of Duke, Aeneas Peebles, this kid out of Duke we got, he's really good. He's going to play immediately. Kamari Copeland, we got him out of JUCO. We think he's going to play immediately. And they were really limiting their workload in spring because they know they don't have incredible depth there. But those frontline defensive tackles, if they're good to go this season, that greatly enhances their ability to be a run-stuffing unit because they're good in the secondary. That's going to be one of the best secondaries in the conference. But they got that. If they can stop the run, you combine that with what I think will be one of the most effective ground games as well in the ACC. Their over-under win total is 8.5. They're right at plus 1,000 to win the ACC. Don't overlook them. You're going to overlook them, aren't you? A lot of people are going to overlook them. Don't overlook them. Colby Crawford up at VT Scoop. We met Colby when we were up there, by the way, doing a great job. And lastly, I know good and well not many of you have spent a lot of time focused on Louisville. Defensive-oriented team again. You think Jeff Brom and you get this idea in your head, and I'm telling you yet again, defensive-oriented team. Running back, probably a perceived weakness here. Nearly 2,000 yards and 24 touchdowns last year that they have to account for. Isaac Brown is a name I just want you to keep an eye on. Write it down in pencil right now. He's a true freshman running back, and Jody Demling does a good job at Cardinal Authority covering them up there. He told us they can't keep him off the field. They're not going to be able to keep him off the field. Now, I know there's usually a trade-off when you lean on true freshmen instead of just working them in. That may be the hand that they've been dealt at Louisville, but they leaned extremely heavily into the portal as well, which makes them kind of a wild card team. No pun intended. I think also there's another kid, Ashton Gillety. Pronunciation is probably wrong there, but he was kind of a breakout player for them last year. I don't think he ever achieved household name status. 6'3", 275, defensive lineman last year. He was first team All-ACC. He will be a game wrecker for them this year. They're getting everything they thought they'd get out of him. So I know those, in some cases, aren't the most high-profile camps in the world. Those are the kinds of names, those are the kinds of stories that will impact this season. Everyone's paying attention to Texas with the running back injuries. Everyone's paying attention to Kirby, talking about his roster and how his threes, I mean, God bless Kirby Smart, not having a full three deep in Athens anymore that could win the Big 12 if they wanted to. But Louisville matters too. Virginia Tech matters too. So pay attention to the entire sport, which is what we like to do around here. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Look at that ad read. Whew, Academy blank page. You know why? Because Academy trusts me to tell you this. I know you've got back to school coming up. Yes. And if you don't have that, you got back to sports coming up. And if you don't have that, what kind of life are we living? But if you don't have that, I know you wear clothes every day. Studies show 97% of our audience wears clothes every day. They sell them at Academy. And the other 3% at least choose Big League Chew, and they sell that at Academy. And you want your bike, you want your grill, you want your fold-out chairs, you want your sporting goods equipment and whatnot. They've got it all at Academy. And if you don't have an Academy Sports and Outdoors in your backyard, well, they've got you set on the good old World Wide Web as well, academy.com. Academy has been linked like arm in arm with us for a long time. They are one of the main reasons why this show is free of charge. They're one of the main reasons when we go out on the road that we're able to go out on the road. And you know what? They watch the show every night. In fact, every partner we have on this show, including one we're going to add tonight, is either a viewer or a listener of the show. So it's not a mistake. It's not a coincidence. Academy Sports and Outdoors, though, your one-stop shop for basically everything I just listed and then some. We had a very interesting sort of debate thrown our way today. And I figure, you know what? It's August, and everyone's talking about playoff odds out there, and everyone's focused on the same handful of teams. So, Colin, show me this thing about Lanning and DeBoer, because I had to take it to the scientific realm of Twitter/X to get an answer on it. So the question, Zach from New Albany, Mississippi hit me. He said, hey, straight up, who wins a national title first? Kalen DeBoer at Bama or Dan Lanning at Oregon? Now I think to myself, I've got an initial opinion, but I also know a lot of other people would, so I do the only thing I can do. I go and I poll. It's an election year. Everyone's polling everything anyway. So I take it to the Twitter streets, and I wonder, this is one I didn't really have a good feel on you guys for. So I asked you, hey, how's this going to turn out? And this was one of the most trafficked polls that we've done in quite a while. And right as we came on air, I screenshot the latest results. So with about 7,800 votes so far in this thing, 53% of you think Dan Lanning wins a national title first. Kalen DeBoer, 47% of you think he wins a national title first. So in predictable fashion, half the replies said their choice and it's not close. Inevitably, anytime that statement's thrown out, it's very close, which is why it's one of the forbidden phrases on the show. Lanning 53, DeBoer 47. So if you're making me bet this, I would go with my classic Bo Herschel strategy, my BHS as I've called it back in the day. And that is, growing up in the South, they would always, especially if you grew up on the Chattahoochee River like I did, which is literally the state line dividing Georgia and Alabama, they would always ask you, choose better running back in SEC history, Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker. So I learned a long time ago, the best way to go about that is say, I'll just give you first pick, I'll take the leftovers. It makes you sound smart, it makes you sound edgy and cool. You still end up with a premier running back. And there's really no solid answer there. Despite what both sides say, they're both really, really good. Well, I think I would do the same thing here. If you honestly told me, hey, DeBoer and Lanning, that is so comparable. Their next 5 years seem comparable enough to me in terms of their shot to win a title where I'd say, you pick. I'll just take whoever's left over. But that is a cop-out, and I know it is. So if you're making me choose, I'd choose Kalen DeBoer. 52-48, basically as close as this poll was. I'd lean DeBoer. Few reasons. Number one, Lanning's got Oregon rolling, but DeBoer doesn't have to rebuild Alabama. DeBoer got handed the baton, and maybe he slightly slowed down. That was when Caleb Downs left, by the way. Slightly slowed down, but they quickly built up speed, and so Alabama's Alabama still. And unlike some other places where you have a big-time head coach, and then it's an unknown that follows him. There's nothing unknown about Kalen DeBoer, and don't be telling me it's unknown whether he can recruit the South, because they're killing it in talent acquisition, which leads me to my next point. The programs will be on equal footing. The talent acquisition profiles, I think, will be very similar. Oregon's recruited at as high a level as they ever have, and I think they consistently will. So we're talking in the future. Oregon will continue to consistently be in the top 5 range of combined talent acquisition, so portal and recruiting every year. But Bama will too. That's one of the great concerns that I think in quick order they alleviated from their own fan base, and that is, hey, we got guys who know how to get players too. And I also thought it was a little short-sighted when Saban retired. There was this thought I think it was more a wish than a thought around college football that, hey, Bama's secretly broke, Bama secretly doesn't have any money. Poverty program in disguise at Alabama. And once Saban leaves and they don't get discounts on kids anymore, runner-up city. Yeah, not so much. The opposite was true. Bama always had the ability to go way deeper in the coffers than they had to. They just didn't have to. And I'm not telling you that they're out there winning bidding wars right now. In fact, quite the opposite. A lot of these teams that are killing it are not the highest bidders. The highest bidders are the ones who don't have proven results to sell, so they have to overcompensate with a deeper bag. But if Bama needs to go deep in that bag, Bama can go deep in the bag too. There is no one, aside from maybe Texas, that's got NIL figured out more methodically and scientifically than Oregon. But at the end of the day, Bama's not taking a back seat to many folks in talent acquisition. So if I've got the team profile and the recruiting profile, well, you know what gives Bama an edge right now is the head-to-head. I was at both games last year. I was wrong both times last year. I picked Lanning and Oregon to beat DeBoer and Washington, and then I end up with just egg all over my face. I got to go buy a new white t-shirt because that wreaks havoc on the threads. And so if I'm looking for a slight edge there, well, head coach. And the fact that I think Bama's got a top 10 staff right now, and I would not quite qualify Oregon as having a top 10 staff when we consider the support staff structure as well. That could change, of course, year to year. But by the slightest of margins, I would go DeBoer. But then I would ask you, before you walk out the door, I would say, could we arrange a side bet? Because I have a little thought of my own here. Instead of making it Dan Lanning or Kalen DeBoer, could I interest you in a prop bet of Dan Lanning and Kalen DeBoer? I believe they'll both win a title in the next 5 years. I believe that. That's a simple yes or no. Do you agree? And if you don't agree, now this is going to have to be really creative. I'll probably have to call up FanDuel and get them to do some things that aren't exactly legal. But I would be interested to see how much action I could take on that. How many of you have $50 that you could bear to part with for the next half decade? I don't need $50. I already have $50. And if you feel the same, I'd be willing to venture this. I don't know what kind of odds we can get on this. I'd be willing to venture this. I think both of them win at least one title in the next 5 years. So who wins it first is the question. Slightly lean Kalen DeBoer. Of course, in like 7 months, Dan Lanning could prove that wrong. So whomst amongst us knows. Good question, though. Lively debate for this time of year. They're watching us in Washington, D.C. They're watching in Greenville, South Carolina, Frisco, Texas, and Eugene, Oregon. You can feel it. Just a palpable hue of anticipation building around the studio here because gas station recruiting wars will soon come to an end. We're changing the game tonight. I made you guys a promise. I have not forgotten the promise. This is not one of those things where I'm going to win. It's one of those things where every single one of you are going to win. Maybe more than once in some cases. What's Michigan's record going to be this year? They just won the national title. They just ran it off, undefeated, historical season, and then here they are with an over-under win total of 8.5 at FanDuel to start the year. And that's down from 9.5. So we've had a lot of action on the under there so far. So they currently sit with an 8.5 over-under win total. That's fairly heavily juiced to the over, but still it has been bumped down from 9.5. They are fourth best right now in terms of odds to win the Big Ten. They are plus 150 to make the playoff. And they are 126th in returning production. I think that's a stat that's been thrown around about as much as any stat that I've heard, pound for pound, about college football this upcoming year. Their recruiting classes, as we dive into this, one more thing you need to know. Their recruiting classes, they had back-to-back-to-back classes that finished inside the top 15. The last two classes they've had, albeit slightly, have been just outside the top 15. So with a lot of talent leaving, they don't have elite classes to backfill them. They got pretty good classes, and they're great. They've been great at developing. But if we're just assuming all that backfilling happens seamlessly, that's a tall proposition. So here is what I think I know about Michigan. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, that's about as elite a 1-2 combo on the interior of a defensive line as you're going to have in college football. I have very little doubt that they will be as stout as they need to be against the run. That will probably be the strength of this team. But also at tight end, they are very good. Running back, very good. Corner, those three positions, you have an elite player that could challenge for being the top player at their position in the sport. So even with all that departing talent, notice those aren't just defensive players I listed there. Even with that departing talent, Michigan still got some studs on their roster. Don't think that this was just an etch-a-sketch where you wipe the entire slate clean. In some cases, like the coaching staff, that did happen, but that team still got a lot of players here. And another thing I think I know is it's going to be one of the most run-heavy offenses in college football. It kind of was last year. I think it may be even more run-heavy this year, partly by design, but mostly by necessity, than it was last year. So here's what I need to know as a result of that. I need to know, can they throw the ball? I mean, if they need to, can they throw the ball? Well, Josh, it didn't matter last year. Well, it did matter last year. Even with how dominant that ground game and that offensive line was, there was a moment, it came in the Rose Bowl against Alabama, where they needed a drive, and J.J. McCarthy made a few throws, and they end up getting down there, tying the game, eventually winning the game. At the very least, we'll talk about their schedule in a second, at the very least, they'll have those moments again this year. Again, at the very least. I don't think this team's as good as it was last year. So maybe more so this year. They'll have to be able to throw the ball. But with the ground-centric approach that I expect from them, is this offensive line close to what it was last year? I don't expect them to fall off a cliff, but when you are replacing 199 starts, when 5 of your top 6 are gone, I know that they have players there. I know that. Okay, but this, I'm not saying Michigan fans have a blind assumption. Maybe some of the more, bathed in the Kool-Aid maize and blue Michigan fans have an assumption that, well, it's Michigan, so we'll always be good on the offensive line. Well, you were great on the offensive line last year. Back-to-back Joe Moore awards. Will you be great again? And the reason I ask that's not because you can't win with a pretty good offensive line, but you probably won't impose your will with a pretty good offensive line. So they better be playing at a high level, especially if you're limited in what you can do, doubly especially in the intermediate passing game. If it's just a shot play offense, play action, and then run the ball, you better have the offensive line that is fit to pave the way for that. Thirdly, can they play from behind? Because last year, here's a paper popper of a stat. This right here is a padlock stat. First of the year. 95% of Michigan's snaps last year came with the lead. That's pretty wild. That's hard to do. I don't think that number will replicate itself this year. So if they find themselves in position to have to play from behind, it's a little different game script than hanging out up at Penn State and just running the ball 30 times in a row and yawning as the clock runs out. What about this coaching staff? This coaching staff, ton of transition. Happy for Sherrone Moore that he got the job. Obviously, he's totally unproven. Now, you need to understand something. If you're watching this for the first time, when I talk about grading a coaching staff, we've got a model that internally grades every guy that coaches this game. So it's not my opinion I'm throwing at you. We got blind criteria, blind filters on here, and we run everyone through the same one, and we weight it for strength of competition and whatnot. But we're not going to grade a guy who's never done it before. So Sherrone Moore just has a data incomplete on him. That's criteria that we've always had. Kirk Campbell, 1 year of experience, offensive coordinator there. Data incomplete on him as well. It could be the best in the game. All that means is we don't have enough of a data set to form a profile on him. This offensive support staff, we do, though. And they're outside the top 75 right now. Now, it's a young staff, so you could see great strides made over the course of a season in that department. But all I can tell you is what we have in the here and now. Now, it could be that Sherrone Moore knows what he has, and this model has no way of knowing that yet because this model sees numbers and Sherrone Moore sees living, breathing human beings. But model doesn't run on faith and confidence. Sherrone Moore can run his program on that. New DC, Wink Martindale, lifetime in the NFL, no college experience. Could be good, could be bad, don't have a profile on him. So this defensive support staff is the backbone of this staff because they are top 10. So they killed it. Sherrone Moore nailed it on that front, but there is a lot of unknown. Shocker, I know, a lot of unknown. I think it would be smart to expect regression and allow yourself to be pleasantly surprised if there's not any drop-off. That's the approach I'm taking with them. This schedule features 3 of the top 5 teams in the college football playoff odds at FanDuel. Simple as that. They got Texas in week 2 at home. They got Oregon November 2nd at home, and they go to Ohio State, of course, to end the year a couple of days after Thanksgiving. There are no really big bye edges that they have. They do, however, play 4 of the bottom 5 teams in the Big Ten. So when you're predicting their schedule, the point is a lot of folks are going to arrive at the same wins, and then you're going to arrive at either losses or question marks. So the best case, as the model sees it for Michigan, is 11-1. Model thinks even best case, there is 1 loss baked in here somewhere. So we're going to go best case for Michigan, 11-1. Worst case, 8-4. Now I'm going to stop for a second. If your worst case, losing what they lost and losing a coaching staff that they lost, is 8-4, I know you don't want to be 8-4. It could be far worse than 8-4, I promise you. So the model seeing no 7-5s or 6-6s out there, it's actually a sign of a really, really rock-solid program. So 8-4 worst case, I predict them to go 9-3. I got Michigan at 9-3 this year. JP Poll starts them at number 11 in the country coming into the year. 9-3 in the Big Ten. What's that good enough for? Now keep in mind, Texas plays them in week 2. So there's a world where one of those losses is to Texas and the other 2 losses are in conference, depending on who they are and depending on how good those teams did the rest of the way. Maybe there's a world where Michigan finds their way into the Big Ten title game. Maybe there's a world where Michigan at 9-3, with their only losses coming to playoff teams, is in and of itself good enough to make the playoff. 9-3. It's going to be one of those great debates. You know it's coming. I think Michigan's going to be one of the teams right there on the bubble. A couple of big questions that we have on tonight's show. And again, looking at the live chat, lively over here. Appreciate you guys being tuned in. Make sure, here's the exercise, subscribe and bring 5 of your friends along to sub as well. And that goes for you guys and girls listening on podcast as well. What was that, Jesse? Where are they? Jesse's talking in my ear. It's very important. Just hold on a second. I'm looking. Oh, I got it. Okay. All right. I found it. So, just business. It's not of anyone else's concern. So a couple of big questions here. First question that I got that I wanted to get to tonight is about what's happening up in Lincoln, Nebraska right now. Many of you have doubt that Nebraska could ever be what Nebraska once was. Well, what Nebraska once was one of the dominant programs in the country. So Nebraska could be really good and still not be what they once were. But Jameson from Dover, New Hampshire said, "Tell me again why I should believe in Matt Rule." Well, Jameson, I'm not telling you have to do anything. I can tell you why I have a little bit of confidence in Matt Rule at Nebraska. Why do I believe? Well, I believe because the dude won 10 games at Temple. And my rule has always been, if you win 10 at Temple, I'll believe in you. And my follow-up rule has been, if you win 11 at Baylor, I'll follow you blindly into the desert. So Matt Rule has done that. So I am willing to follow Matt Rule blindly. Remember, Temple, the progression in record, 2-10, 6-6, 10-4. Then he's at Baylor, 1-11, 7-6, 11-3. And the beauty here is I would argue Nebraska is better resourced than either one of those, especially as we enter a new era. And I would also argue if you got your quarterback in Dylan Raiola, and that's your quarterback of the future, and also it proved that you can go out and swing with the big boys in an effort to land premier talent, this is not guesswork. This is not a hotshot coordinator getting his first shot. It's not a guy who's coming from the NFL but having never done it in college. Rule came from the NFL, but he got the NFL job because he did it in college. So if I don't have to guess, and I saw the dude do it at Temple, and I saw the dude do it at Baylor, my reason for believing is I've seen it before. That's the easiest thing to believe in. Believing in a proven commodity doesn't, frankly, even require all that much faith. Not that I don't have faith in him, but I mean, I don't even look at this as all that difficult. Now, what am I saying about him? Am I yelling Nebraska playoff, Nebraska playoff? I'm not yelling that this year. I think they could work themselves into being a perennial fringe playoff contender, or maybe the kind of program that on average contends for a spot 1 out of every 2 years or 1 out of every 3 years. I mean, that's a heck of a lot better than what you have had at Nebraska. But also, Matt Rule just kind of strikes me as a guy who gets it. He's uniquely in tune with what Nebraska is, what they aren't, but also I think he understands what they could be. He's got a really good vision for what they could be, but also I don't view him as taking Nebraska and steering the program in a direction it has no business being steered. Like, there are certain lanes Nebraska knows it can hang in. There are some lanes they know we don't belong over there. Let's stay here. If we do it right in this lane, a la Washington last year, a la TCU 2 years ago, we can be there at the end. Nebraska could be there at the end. They're never going to trade shot for shot with Georgia. They're not trading shot for shot with Ohio State. But you know what? You catch them in a down year and it's one of your spike years, this is still college football. Okay, anything can happen. Next up, we actually had 10 questions that I asked Jesse. You think we got room to throw these in tonight? He said, maybe not all of them, but we did arrive on 2 of them. So the next one, James from Decatur, Georgia, says, judging by the AP poll, the SEC looks overrated once again, because according to James, this is a trend. He continues, I'll say it now, the SEC will not win the national championship this year. Well, my goodness, what a stand to take, James. Well, my goodness. So what did the AP poll say? The evil AP has dared to put 7 SEC teams in their preseason top 15. Now, you might not be surprised to find that I don't view this as too overly egregious, because the JP poll has 9 in the top 20. Actually, 9 in the top 15. Now, if it is any consolation, outside the top 15, if you go the rest of the top 25, I only had 1 more. So, hey, I had some SEC teams in my top 25, but I made sure to put them all at the front of the line. Is that bias? Well, don't ask me. Ask the model. The model is what puts the JP poll together. You guys think I would dare interfere in something as sacred as the JP poll? I do. No, I wouldn't. The SEC does not play for anything, James. The SEC does not play for a national title. A team will play for a national title. A team will win the national championship. I have never, outside of media days, seen a helmet with an SEC on the side of it. I've seen a team with a G on the side of it and a little SEC sticker on the back. That's about as close as we get. That's called conference affiliation. But I do take your point. Your point, I think, is incorrect or misguided, because there's this world, if we want to talk about who wins the title, there's this world where I'm looking at a slider right now, and it says Ohio State has the second best odds to win it all. It says Oregon has the third best odds to win it all. Now, the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th teams are SEC teams, and the first one is too. But never mind that. Never mind Vegas and pollsters and whatnot. What do they know? Hey, let me ask you something. Let's just say in 10 seconds I'm going to snap my fingers and all truths were known. There was no more guesswork. We just knew who the best teams were. Voila. And right in front of you, James, appears a sheet of paper, and it tells you that it's a fact that Ohio State will be the best team in the country this year. But then that piece of paper tells you 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 will all be SEC teams. James, who would be your pick to win the national title if you could pick one team? Because mine would be Ohio State, because I snapped my fingers and the truth paper told me they're the best team. What if they went on to win the national title and then everything else held serve? So SEC doesn't have a team that wins the title. SEC has the literal 2nd through 8th best teams in the country. Guess who the best conference in the country was? It was the SEC. Guess where it didn't matter? On the podium when they were handing over the national title. So, point being, James, it is very possible that the SEC is the best conference in college football and no SEC team wins the title. Quite honestly, as we sit here today, that's probably how I'd pick it. I'd probably pick Ohio State to win the title today. I'd absolutely slam dunk fashion say the SEC is the best conference. And also, if you'll notice when Colin put that question up there, it didn't just say SEC is the best conference. It didn't just say the AP overrated him. It said, yet again. Which, Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, means that there's an established pattern of this happening. So again, can we stop with this foolishness about the SEC being overrated? I have cold, hard statistics, courtesy of Stats and Info in front of me. The SEC in the playoff era, it's only a decade. They won 6 titles. They had 12 teams in the thing. The rest of college football won 4 titles. They won 6 of them. They had 638 kids drafted in that time. The Big Ten was next with 457. The SEC, this sounds like a typo, but it's not. The SEC has had the #1 ranked recruiting class every year since 2009. There are kids driving, at least with a learner's license in some states, that weren't alive the last time a team other than an SEC team had the top-ranked recruiting class. And the reason I put the draft on the back end is because I know some of you too well. Some of you would say, well, yeah, that's all rigged. Recruiting's rigged. Yeah, of course you guys over at 24/7 or On3 or Rivals or whatever, you guys all make sure that the SEC's propped up. Well, is the NFL in on it as well, friends? Because the NFL sure seems to share that sentiment 4 years later when the kids are knocking on their door. All I'm saying is, yeah, it's possible no SEC team wins the title this year, but them being overrated, I mean, the age-old rule on this show, if you call someone overrated, what are they rated? As far as I can tell, the SEC's rated #1. As far as I can tell, they still are #1. Greg Sankey ought to send us a check for all the free marketing we give him. Moving right along, got a couple more things to get to, and then we got the big thing to get to, immunity. LSU's record this year will be, hello, anyone fill in the blank? Well, I'm about to give you my prediction for LSU. Here's what you need to know. Courtesy of FanDuel, over-under win total, 9.5. It is juiced heavily to the under, but it is 9.5. They have the 5th best odds to win the SEC. They are plus 125 to make the playoff. So like just shy of being outright favored to have a playoff spot. This is a top 5 recruiting program the last 5 years. So the talent profile on this team definitely tracks as a playoff contender. But now we got to get specific. What do we think we know? Well, what I think I know about LSU is it's the best offensive tackle combo in college football. Will Campbell, Emory Jones, those guys will both be playing on Sunday very, very soon. And it's going to greatly impact the style of offense they can play and probably that they have to play this year. The next thing I think I know is that quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. If he has a good year, it'll be one of the best stories in college football. Garrett Nussmeier, it's crazy if you know his life story. His life story, he's just bounced around all over the place. He's lived in like 20 different places, which means if he commits somewhere and doesn't immediately start at quarterback, you'd think that'd be the kind of guy who would be a portal hopper. And instead, he stayed. He stuck around. He waited his time, loves LSU, and that's the kind of guy I root for. Now, just because I root for you doesn't mean that the world works out the way we want it to for you. But Garrett Nussmeier, I think, is ready for it. If they fail this year, it won't be because the moment was too big, in other words. So I think he's well prepared mentally for this. I think physically he's prepared for it, just a different physical skill set than what they had last year in Jaden Daniels. I also think I know they get how they have to win this year. I don't think many of you take time to listen to Brian Kelly press conferences, but you ought to listen to some of them because he's telling you what they got to do this year. His most recent one, I was watching it earlier today, it may have been from today or yesterday, and he's just flat out telegraphing, we're going to play in a ton of close games this year. He knows they cannot replace that production at receiver. Now, in the aggregate, they can be good enough there, and they can be better at tailback because they're also not going to run the ball at quarterback like they did last year when Daniels was quite literally their leading rusher. He knows they're not where they need to be top of the line defensively yet. So they've got to try and be in games with 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, have one more possession than you, and have the ball bounce their way and win their big games and be plus 3 or 4 in one possession battles. That's what Brian Kelly is telling you. I don't even have to read between the lines. That's what he's saying. They get that. They've understood that since spring. They know that's what they got to do. So now we talk about what we need to know. I need to know, as does the entire country, how much this defense improves. Because they were in the 100s in most critical categories last year. Terrible. I mean, historically rancid defense at LSU. It wasted a Heisman Trophy winning season. It wasted an elite offense. Had Mike Denbrock there dialing it up, had your Heisman Trophy quarterback, and you lost 3 games because you couldn't stop molasses in December, as Meemaw would say. That was a shame. That was them. This is now. How improved are they? Are the rush yards there? That's another thing we need to know. Jaden Daniels, as I said, at quarterback, their leading rusher last year. Over 1,100 rushing yards. Logan Diggs was next with 653. Neither of them returned, neither does Noah Cain, and there is no proven production for LSU on this board here. Now, I say that, but I'm also going to tell you we've gotten really good reports out of fall camp down there that they believe this is part of their offense that they can lean on. But if you know the history of LSU leaning on the tailback position post like Leonard Fournette, with very few exceptions, it's been more miss than hit. So I'm taking a wait-and-see approach on that. I don't think they need some 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think Kyron Lacy, who's their one right now at receiver, I don't think they need him to be a 1,000-yard receiver this year. He has the ability to be. I don't think they need that. What I want to know is in the aggregate of trying to replace, I think, 2,700 some odd receiving yards with a couple of guys that are in the NFL now, in the aggregate, can they make up for it? If they don't have Kyron Lacy go off this year, can they have like 4 guys get me 500 or more receiving yards? Because if you got that, and you got a little bit better defense than is expected, and you can run the ball and win those close games, you could be a playoff team. You could be that. Still a lot of good players, a lot of good talent at LSU. This coaching staff, the defense last year. You'll look back on the Brian Kelly era, however long it ends up being, and his 2023 defensive hires will go down collectively as some of the worst decision-making that he made there. The good decision-making was he flushed it, and he went and single-handedly upgraded a side of the ball as much as any coach at any level of college football did this past cycle. So now they're very high level over there. Kevin Peoples is one of the best pass rush coaches, probably the best in the country. But also he went and got Bo Davis. He went and he got Corey Raymond back down there, Blake Baker. And by the way, speaking of Corey Raymond, just in general, injecting a lot more Louisiana flavor back into LSU was badly needed. And there are some off-the-field support staff types that have names you probably wouldn't know that are back there now. That was badly needed. And the closer you get to Louisiana, the more frequently folks will tell you that. The support staff here is probably only top 60 offensively. Joe Sloan's the offensive coordinator, only 2 years as a play caller, so we don't grade him. We need at least 3 years under the belt. But defensive coaching staff there, support staff, very, very high level. As big a jump as any side of the ball in college football. So how good can the players be is the question. What can the coaches do with the players? Schedule this year. 5 teams in the top 20 of the college football playoff odds are on LSU's schedule. Out of conference is not easy. They open with USC. They also have UCLA at home, but they play 3 of the 4 bottom teams in the SEC. Vandy's on the schedule. Arkansas's on the schedule. And I'll tell you one other thing. Paper pop here. Okay, this is a padlock stat in terms of scheduling. We track bye edges around here. And LSU has one of the biggest hidden bye advantages against any team in a big moment this year. October 12th is the biggest Saturday of the year in college football. Ole Miss goes to Baton Rouge that Saturday. I need you to understand something. LSU's got a bye week before that. That will be Ole Miss's 7th consecutive game. Anybody here? Yeah. 6 games right before that. So huge bye advantage in favor of LSU there. What is the best case for the Tigers this year? My best case for LSU is 11-1. Model sees a loss no matter how we slice it. My worst case for LSU, bordered on 5-7, because there is a total disaster scenario here with this defense combined with losing all that offensive production and not being able to backfill it. It's the widest variance gap that we have for any major team, but I'm not going to go that wide of a gap. So my worst case is 6-6 for LSU, and even 11-1 to 6-6 is pretty wild. My prediction for them is 9-3. The JP poll has them at number 10 to start the season. My prediction is 9-3 for them, and I'm going to be honest with you, that bye advantage they have against Ole Miss was worth going from 8-4 to 9-3. I'm a little bit lower on LSU than some other folks are, but there is also this world when you look at the way their schedule starts. If they start off strong against USC and that bowling ball turns into a snowball that starts to roll downhill, I see it just the same way you guys do. I see how that can turn into all of a sudden LSU is a playoff team. I can see it. So I'm going to go 9-3. And there's a lot of variance there. A lot of variance. All right. One more thing to get to, and then gas station recruiting wars commences. Actually, it's not going to commence. Gas station recruiting wars will come to a very, very dramatic and chaotic ending. Bold predictions, things that you believe so fervently you claim you have bet your own money on these things. First up on this Thursday evening here in mid-August, what about Texas A&M? Tucker said the Aggies will have a losing record, but they'll beat Texas. Well, this is insane. So this is a 9.75 on the boldness scale. Their win total is 8.5, by the way. So understand what he just predicted. He just predicted that A&M has to go into the Texas game, which is the last game of the year. They have to go into that game 4-7. They can't go into it 5-6 because if they're going to win the game, that would make them 6-6, and they didn't have a losing record. So A&M's got to be 4-7 going into the game, which means they've lost to basically all of Notre Dame, Florida, Missouri, Auburn, LSU, South Carolina, Mississippi State, or Arkansas. There are 7 losses there, and you're telling me they're going to beat Texas? Well, I'm telling you they're not, because if they're bad enough to lose those, they will not be good enough. I don't care how charged Kyle Field is. They will not be good enough to hang with Texas, so that's a 9.75. Appreciate you playing. Next up, I like this one. We had a version of this last year. Brian from Wilmington, North Carolina. 2 teams from the Carolinas will make the playoff this year. Okay, slow down. I think a lot of you just started yelling 9s on the boldness scale. This is only an 8.25 for me. Think about the structure of the playoff. We've got a G5 auto bid baked in here as well. So we got Clemson plus 205 odds to make the playoff. They're from South Carolina. We got NC State from North Carolina plus 470 odds to make the playoff. But they're both in the same conference. Point being, someone's got to come out of the ACC. So we could have one of them. But also, Liberty has the best odds to go undefeated of any team in college football. And if they do that, they're going to be the one in the playoff. But also, App State is favored to win the Sun Belt. Maybe App State's the highest ranked G5 conference champ. So they're in this thing as well. I think there's a reasonable chance this ends up happening. And on the surface, it sounds a lot bolder than it is. So I gave that an 8.25. This next one is a lot more bold than 8.25. Chris just chose violence this evening from Atlanta, Georgia. He said Ohio State will miss the playoff. And Chris laid out the whole scenario. But let's just take those first 1, 2, 3, 5 words. Ohio State misses the playoff. Nobody sees this coming. Nobody. How many people out there, and I'm talking about people putting their money on it, how many people are predicting Ohio State to just outright miss the playoff? How many people are putting that in writing and making it public? I'm going to make this a 9.75. This would reset every scale of logic. Like right now, people are talking about what happens to Ryan Day if he loses the Michigan game. But even those paths have him in the playoff. This one doesn't have him in the playoff. So I'm the first one to tell you you're like insane if you're talking about hot seat with Ryan Day. But if they don't make the playoff with what I believe to be the best team he's had there, I don't even know what it would sound like. That's 3 losses, by the way. I'm thinking it takes 3 losses for them not to be in. So that, I would assume, means they lose the Oregon game, they lose the Penn State game, and they lose to Michigan? Is that what happened here? If that's what happened, 10-2 versus 9-3 is a very different thing. See, if they go 10-2, and they're probably going to make the playoff if they do that, yeah, they're viewed as an underachiever, but they got a shot to atone for it in the postseason. Plus, maybe they beat Michigan, or if they lost to Michigan, maybe they still made the Big Ten title game and get a rematch, or maybe Michigan's not there. There are other ways to put lipstick on the pig at that point. But if they're 9-3, they're not going to be in. And if they're 9-3 and not in, and Ryan Day's sitting there with that kind of talent and they didn't make the postseason, yeah, I don't even know. I have no idea. Hopefully, we don't have to cross that bridge. And lastly, this one's eclectic. Robert from Tucson, Arizona. Arizona makes it to the playoffs only to be killed by an SEC team. I'm not a fan of this prediction, Robert. because it has total randomness baked into it. So my first question is, what are we doing? Secondly, let's talk about this. Arizona making the playoff. They're plus 1,100 to make the playoff this year. Over-under win total 7.5. They have the 7th best odds to win the Big 12. It is the Big 12, so the rule there is anything can happen. But even if it happens, even if they make the playoff, you're predicting which conference is going to knock them out, which is out of anyone's control. Even the committee doesn't know how the bracket stacks up. So I'm going to put a 9.5 on this, and here's what's going to make me angry. If they make it, I'll be happy for Arizona for making it. But if they make it and go get beat by 38 against Georgia, someone's going to come back and tell me I told you so. And there's literally no possible way you could have seen this coming. You could tell me you saw Arizona making the playoff. Who they play in the playoff, there is no skill whatsoever in knowing that. And you'll be hard-pressed to convince me otherwise. Oh, boy. If we had a drum roll, I would go ahead and ask you to start it. So we were looking at those odds a second ago. It's been really fun lately producing these shows because we always have FanDuel pulled up on a monitor. And more and more every week, action is coming in on these lines and these games and these totals and these prop bets and whatnot. So we're seeing where the market's taking some of these. Case in point, we had Michigan over under 9.5. Well, now it's down to 8.5. Well, of course, because people have bet the under. That's been fun to watch. And I keep telling you, FanDuel, fully on board with us, the official odds provider of Pate State. So we appreciate them for that. We appreciate them because they're in touch with us constantly, like every week on this, and are always ready, willing, and able to give us specialized stuff, information that's not public. But also, it's just nice to have someone who cares about responsible gaming as well. It's nice to not constantly get chirped at from an online sports book saying, hey, push this stuff by any means necessary. These folks flat out want me to tell you, yeah, you don't have money to bet, you don't need to be betting. If they didn't want me to tell you that, we wouldn't be partnered with FanDuel. So they're the only real one in the room when we were talking to online sports books that said, not only do we not mind you doing that, we want you to do that. So responsible gaming is the absolute name of the game on this. Don't be betting a dime you can't afford to lose, first off. And secondly, it's okay to just go look. It's okay if you never plan on betting a dime in your life. Some of this stuff is just entertaining to look at. So if you want it, it's at FanDuel, and you take it and do whatever you want to with it. We appreciate them. That's a partner that's been with us all year. Academy is a partner that's been with us for several years. But that's not what you're here for tonight. We've gone on an incredible journey this year. Back in the spring, I sort of started toying around with the idea that we're on the road all the time. I'm at college football games every week in the fall. In the spring, we were on a campus, multiple campuses, campi, which is the plural of campus, and we were constantly at gas stations. I'm a storm chaser too. So in the spring, I'm in Oklahoma, I'm in Kansas, I'm all across the Midwest and into Dixie Alley, and we're at gas stations all the time. You're just sitting in gas station parking lots. I know these places like the back of my hand, and I thought, why don't we have a partnership? So we started throwing it out there on the show. The thing about this show is it's big enough where someone in every walk of life is watching. And so quickly, we got hit up by like 7 or 8 gas stations. So we started to talk. We wanted a partnership. But the way partnerships work around here is different. In the ad sales world, they give you a certain amount of money, you put their logo somewhere, you do a little 30-second ad read, it's done. That's not the way it works here. That's never the way it's going to work here. Around here, the only way we enter into partnerships is if it benefits every single one of us, and that's always been the way it was going to work here. So we went through the process. We went through the recruiting process, and we whittled it down to 4 finalists. Love's, Pilot, Quick Trip, Racetrack. They were all awesome to work with. The recruiting process was phenomenal because we found someone who was on board with the way that we insist on doing things around here. Not only were they on board with it, they were very, very excited to do it that way. And I'll tell you why. Because they watch the show. So they get the show. So we didn't have to explain our audience to anyone. And so tonight has been the night that we've circled. We've led up to it for weeks and weeks and weeks. Some of you thought it was ridiculous. I disagree. And so without further ado, Jesse and Colin, gas station recruiting wars commitment ceremony. It is go time. Okay, Josh, can you hear me? Hey, quiet down. Shut up! Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, this has been one of the wildest recruitments that I personally can remember in the modern era. Knowing you like I think I do, this cannot have been easy for you. It hasn't been easy, Josh. It has not been easy. In fact, this is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I haven't lived a very hard life, you know. I got to thank God. I got to thank my family. I got to thank Racetrack and Quick Trip and Pilot, Flying J, and Loves for even making this possible. You know, we wouldn't be here today without them. It's amazing to be recruiting. You know, it's just amazing to be able to be in a position to give everyone gas this fall. If we can give everyone gas this fall, then our mission has been accomplished, you know. I couldn't have said it better myself. You've always had a way with words. I appreciate that about you. Okay, moment of truth. Someone's life's about to change. Who's it going to be? It's a big moment. We've waited a long time for it. I got 4 really great companies here in front of me. It's Quick Trip. We're going with Quick Trip. It's Quick Trip. Yeah, it's Quick Trip. Here's the promise I gave you guys a long time ago. Oh my goodness, look at this. The promise I gave you guys a long time ago was anytime we partnered with someone, I was going to make sure that it benefited all of us. So let me break down exactly what that means for you. In our meetings with Quick Trip, I explained exactly that. They finished our sentences for us. Probably the best synergy, like Academy was like this too. Best synergy that we've ever had in any kind of partnership negotiation. Because it really wasn't negotiation. Everyone was excited, a lot of laughter, but they said, yeah, we get it. All right, what do we want to do? And I said, my folks want free gas. That's what they want. So in almost like presidential fashion, I can announce tonight that the powers that be at Quick Trip have authorized me to give away literal thousands of dollars in free gas this fall. Why do I say this fall? Well, that's because part 2 of the announcement, which I didn't really tease, but I'll make now, is that Quick Trip is sponsoring our tour this fall. And we haven't even named it, but we will this Sunday night. So you talk about Pate State material. Those folks right there are Pate State material. They get it. It's the reason that we want to be in partnership with them. And I can promise you, they're watching, and I can promise you I'm watching. And so just like it's worked with Chali of Supremacy, just like it's worked with those Academy gift cards, if you are caught promoting this show, if you're caught sending in good feedback, if you just catch me on a good day or see me on the road, and I'm in the right mood, we're just tossing out tanks of gas. I know times are tough economically. Quick Trip does as well. I know quite literally every one of you drive a car. Most of them, outside of management's Tesla collection, still take gasoline. And so they are here in the nick of time to help you out. So we won here, they won here. Most importantly, every single one of you are going to win here. So hats off to all of these gas stations because it was fun getting to know all of them. But Quick Trip felt like home. And so we are home. It is Quick Trip. I appreciate you guys so much, for our entire crew, for welcoming us down here in Fort Lauderdale. For producer Jesse, for director Colin, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great start to your weekend, and we'll see you back here Sunday night.